An obsessed man rarely announces himself. He reveals himself in micro moments. Have you ever noticed the way someone's eyes linger on you just slightly longer than casual, almost as if they are trying to memorize the curve of your smile or the softness in your voice? Yet, when you catch him staring, he quickly looks away, almost embarrassed by the intensity he cannot control. These are not coincidences, nor are they trivial. They are the delicate, unspoken fingerprints of secret obsession. Throughout history, women of power and wisdom have learned to see beyond the surface, to recognize the subtle behaviors that reveal hidden desire and fascination. Cleopatra, for instance, understood how Caesar's gaze, his hesitation, and the smallest gestures of attention revealed not mere admiration, but a fixation that ran deeper than loyalty or politics. She observed carefully, noting the quiet ways he mirrored her moods, waited for her words, and bent the rules of his own rigid life to accommodate her presence. And in this quiet observation lies the first lesson. Obsession hides in the details. An obsessed man rarely announces himself outright. The first signs are almost imperceptible. The man who remembers the exact way you like your tea, the detail in your offhand remark, or the way he somehow knows what is troubling you before you say a word. He is drawn to you in ways that defy reason, driven by a mix of fascination, admiration, and a subconscious longing for emotional union. Psychology calls this attunement, but in truth, it is much more. A man's brain subtly rewires itself around you, imprinting your presence as a source of emotional activation. The dopamine pathways of desire, attention, and reward entwine themselves with your very essence. And he begins to see the world not as he always did, but filtered through the lens of your presence. Women often overlook these small signs, dismissing them as politeness or coincidence, but the wise woman sees the pattern, understands the rhythm, and awakens to the deeper currents beneath casual interaction. Consider the gaze. A man's eyes betray the desire his words are afraid to say. This is not just poetic metaphor, it is biological truth. Men are wired to reveal their focus through micro-expressions, the slight dilation of the pupils, the subtle inclination of the head, the unintentional mimicry of your posture. In the courts of history, these behaviors were recognized by those who understood power and attraction. Cleopatra noticed how Caesar's posture would shift unconsciously in her presence. Now he adjusted his speech to mirror her own cadence. Such mirroring is not manipulation, but a subconscious attunement to emotional frequency. He becomes a reflection of your energy, a living echo of your moods, drawn into synchrony with the rhythm of your soul. And this is where fascination deepens. The man who is secretly obsessed is not only watching, he is internalizing, processing, and responding to your inner world without your explicit permission. Yet, the most confounding behavior often appears as inconsistency. He may draw near, then withdraw, creating what many women mistake for disinterest. But this push-pull pattern is a hallmark of secret obsession. Fear of intimacy, fear of vulnerability, fear of being overwhelmed by his own feelings. These create intermittent withdrawal that paradoxically intensifies the emotional magnetism. When he distances, the mind of a woman sensitive to emotional subtleties begins to whirl, trying to interpret the signals, inadvertently deepening her own investment. Psychology explains this through the lens of attachment theory. Men with high emotional intensity but moderate avoidance tendencies exhibit this oscillating pattern. Historical parallels abound. Achilles in myth alternated between ferocious presence and withdrawal with Patroclus, creating tension, longing, and obsession that would not easily be broken. The lesson: Distance does not equal lack of interest. It often signals emotional intensity unprocessed. A man secretly obsessed will also bend his own rules for you. He may skip routines, sacrifice convenience, or compromise comfort in ways that seem irrational. Caesar, for example, risks political maneuvering simply to spend moments in Cleopatra's presence. Obsession does not always present as grand declarations. It is found in the seemingly small, inconsequential concessions that reveal a deeper emotional commitment. And here is the subtle psychology. The more he breaks his own logic for you, the stronger the internal emotional imprint grows. Each deviation reinforces the connection, creating an internal loop of desire that is both self-perpetuating and increasingly compelling. At the core of these behaviors lies emotional mirroring, a principle both ancient and contemporary. Men subconsciously reflect the emotional state of the woman they are drawn to, creating a feedback loop of attention and desire. This is not manipulation, but instinctive response. A woman who notices the way his posture shifts, the tone of his voice softening, the way he adjusts his energy to match hers, gains insight into the unseen architecture of his obsession. Historical strategy often relied on such observation. Cleopatra, Nefertiti, and other women who commanded influence mastered the art of perceiving what men could not articulate, using subtle reflection as a lens to understand intentions, desires, and vulnerabilities. And yet, an obsessed man is not merely drawn by your external beauty or charm. He is captivated by the vulnerability contrast you present. He becomes intensely aware of the parts of himself that he hides from the world, the softness he seldom reveals, the fears he keeps secret. You do not even need to intentionally create this effect. It emerges naturally when a woman embodies authenticity and emotional clarity. Consider how the Trojan War myth illustrates this principle. Helen's allure was not only in her beauty, but in the way her presence awakened latent obsession, desire, and even inner conflict among men. Similarly, in everyday life, the woman who is emotionally attuned yet unapologetically herself evokes fascination that is not easily forgotten. He becomes drawn to the reflection of himself that he only sees through you. Yet fascination can provoke resistance. A man secretly obsessed often fights his own feelings, oscillating between magnetic draw and emotional retreat. He may appear aloof, seemingly indifferent or preoccupied with other matters. This is not rejection. It is internal conflict, a battle between desire and fear of loss, fear of inadequacy, or fear of dependency. History is replete with such examples. Julius Caesar often had to navigate the tension between political duty and personal fascination with Cleopatra. His brief absences, strategic retreats, and occasional emotional coldness were not signs of disinterest, but the subconscious struggle of a mind ensnared by obsession. Understanding this allows a woman to interpret these behaviors without internalizing them as a reflection of her own worth. Crucial psychological shift from attachment to awareness. Let us now consider the science of attention. Obsession, at its core, is selective attention amplified by emotional significance. When a man becomes obsessed, his brain begins to filter stimuli, prioritizing your presence, words, and actions above all else. Dopamine pathways are activated when he experiences moments of connection, subtle acknowledgement, or emotional alignment. This is why seemingly small gestures, a remembered preference, a spontaneous message, or an unprompted act of consideration carry disproportionate weight. Cleopatra and Caesar understood this principle intuitively. The tiniest recognition could cement loyalty, fascination, and unspoken attachment. Today, women can observe these small acts and recognize the powerful underlying currents that indicate a man's obsession, even when it is not overtly expressed. Psychologically, the intensity of secret obsession is heightened by intermittent reinforcement. Just as a child or pet becomes conditioned by inconsistent reward, a man's mind is drawn more strongly to a woman who provides subtle, unpredictable engagement rather than constant accessibility. Historical tales of love, intrigue, and political alliances repeatedly show this pattern. When Cleopatra would strategically withdraw Caesar's attention, longing and emotional focus intensified. This principle is key for modern women to understand. Obsession thrives not on chasing, but on allowing the natural rhythms of engagement to activate desire and fascination. Beyond attention and presence, obsession is also encoded in emotional energy. Men are attracted to emotional authenticity, the combination of strength, softness, and unwavering self-respect. When a woman embodies emotional clarity, sets boundaries, and maintains her inner life, she becomes magnetic without effort. Historical examples illustrate this vividly. Nefertiti's serene command of her court, the way she maintained elegance under scrutiny, ensured that those around her, including men of power, became emotionally invested and captivated. Similarly, a modern woman who cultivates inner sovereignty, emotional intelligence, and self-love naturally awakens fascination, intrigue, and even obsession in those attuned to her energy. Consider also the subtle power of mirroring desire versus chasing attention. An obsessed man mirrors your emotional state before he consciously acknowledges it. This is why he may appear to anticipate your needs, align his schedule, or subconsciously reflect your moods. The psychological trigger here is emotional resonance. When he experiences alignment with your authentic energy, his brain releases subtle rewards of validation, attachment, and emotional fulfillment. Historical analogies abound. Cleopatra's understanding of Caesar's moods and anticipatory responses strengthened their connection far more than overt pursuit ever could. Similarly, the modern woman who notices and responds intuitively creates an environment where fascination and obsession deepen naturally, without forcing engagement. And yet, obsession is not static. It evolves through small moments of tension, vulnerability, and curiosity. Every interaction is a potential catalyst, a glance that lingers, a word that resonates, a subtle withdrawal that provokes longing. Achilles and Patroclus demonstrate this dynamic vividly. Their obsession was perpetually renewed by the interplay of presence and absence, intensity and restraint. In modern relational psychology, these mechanisms remain. Fascination thrives on contrast, emotional peaks, and unpredictable alignment. Recognizing this allows a woman to step back from emotional reactivity and see the patterns unfold with clarity, empowering her to navigate the emotional landscape with awareness rather than need. Ultimately, awakening to a man's hidden obsession requires perception, patience, and psychological insight. It is not about forcing recognition, manipulating behavior, or demanding attention. It is about cultivating awareness, noticing the subtle signs, observing patterns, and understanding the underlying currents of desire and attachment. Cleopatra, Nefertiti, and countless other women of influence mastered this art, not by chasing, but by seeing, understanding, and embodying feminine energy that demanded attention naturally. In the modern context, this translates to women who prioritize self-respect, emotional intelligence, and inner clarity, recognizing fascination as a reflection of alignment rather than control. By now, the pattern is clear. Obsession manifests in the details, in the gaze, in the mirroring, in the push-pull, and in the bending of routines. It is intensified by intermittent reinforcement, emotional resonance, and the woman's own self-worth and clarity. The awareness of these patterns is the first step in mastery, the awakening that allows a woman to see beyond surface behavior and into the rich, intricate psychology of desire. He is not merely paying attention, he is drawn, rewired, and captivated at levels that transcend words, logic, or conscious choice. The intelligent, emotionally aware woman recognizes this not as manipulation, but as the natural consequence of alignment, energy, and psychological magnetism. As this chapter concludes, let the lesson resonate. Obsession is revealed not in grand gestures, but in the subtle architecture of attention, energy, and emotional mirroring. Historical examples, psychological insight, and feminine power converge to create a roadmap, one that guides a woman through awareness, recognition, and understanding. You are not merely observing behavior. You are decoding desire, understanding fascination, and stepping into a space where your own energy amplifies the natural pull of attraction. The awakening has begun. The subtle signs, the micro moments, the mirrored energy, and the push-pull pattern are no longer mysteries. They are a map guiding you toward clarity, understanding, and the power of feminine awareness. And from here, the next step is not just observation, but understanding the hidden psychology that drives obsession, the currents beneath the surface, the loops of desire, fear, and longing that animate the heart of a man secretly captivated by you. Obsession begins when a woman becomes part of a man's identity, not just his attraction. Have you ever wondered why some men seem utterly captivated by one woman while appearing indifferent to the rest of the world? Why the intensity of attention, the longing glances, the subtle mirroring of moods, and even moments of withdrawal seem almost magnetic? There is a hidden architecture at play, the psychology of secret obsession. While Chapter 1 illuminated the behaviors, this chapter explores the forces that drive them: evolutionary wiring, attachment patterns, emotional resonance, and the feminine traits that awaken fascination. Understanding this inner landscape transforms confusion into clarity and gives women the power to see the invisible currents that move desire. History is littered with examples of men whose obsession was triggered not by physical beauty alone, but by the subtle interplay of presence, energy, and emotional resonance. Consider Helen of Troy. Her presence sparked the Trojan War, not simply because of her outward charm, but because of how she triggered profound longing, idealization, and desire in those around her. Obsession, at its core, is a combination of emotional resonance, psychological fixation, and an internal recalibration of attention and desire. Modern psychology explains this as selective attention and dopamine-driven reinforcement, yet the underlying truth is timeless. A man's fixation is a reflection of alignment with the energy, mystery, and emotional clarity of the woman he cannot stop thinking about. The first key mechanism of obsession is identity shift. A man becomes secretly captivated when a woman is no longer just an object of desire, but becomes entwined with his sense of self. His mind begins to associate her presence with emotional stability, excitement, and purpose. This is why obsession is rarely about casual interest. It is about the emotional imprint she leaves on his internal world. Julius Caesar, for instance, did not simply admire Cleopatra's intellect and charm. Her presence reshaped his focus, strategy, and priorities. The woman who triggers obsession becomes a reference point around which the man's thoughts, decisions, and attention rotate. In modern psychology, this is a combination of reward reinforcement and emotional attachment. In historical reality, it has always been the subtle engine behind fascination and loyalty. Closely tied to identity shift is the paradox of absence. A man obsesses more when the woman is not constantly available. The mind of a man captivated by fascination experiences tension and longing that amplifies desire in her absence. This is why the pull of distance can be stronger than the comfort of presence. Ancient myth provides vivid examples. Helen's brief absences created emotional chaos that drove men to extremes, sparking action, obsession, and even war. Similarly, in everyday life, the modern woman who maintains her boundaries, nurtures her inner world, and does not allow her energy to be consumed entirely creates the fertile ground for secret fixation. The psychological trigger is simple. Absence magnifies attention, longing, and internal emotional replay. But obsession is not just about absence. It is about the feminine traits that awaken the psyche. Men are wired to respond to a blend of authenticity, emotional clarity, mystery, and self-respect. They are drawn to women who are grounded in their own lives, who hold space for themselves and for the emotional depth of others. Cleopatra exemplified this beautifully. Her intelligence, composure, and selective engagement created fascination, not because she was manipulative, but because she embodied self-possession. Modern women who emulate these traits, unwavering self-respect, emotional intelligence, quiet confidence, and playful mystery, trigger neurological and emotional responses that deepen obsession. The man does not consciously decide to fixate. His brain is naturally drawn to alignment, energy resonance, and the subtle contrast of emotional soft power with unyielding standards. One of the most overlooked aspects of male obsession is the vulnerability contrast. Men reveal their secret obsession when they show sides of themselves they hide from the world. This is why moments of vulnerability, the quiet admission of fear, the rare softening of pride, the hesitation before opening emotionally, signal profound fixation. Achilles and Patroclus illustrate this principle vividly. The intensity of their bond was amplified by the rare glimpses into each other's inner worlds. In modern relationships, a man who is secretly obsessed will unconsciously reveal cracks in his armor, often in ways that seem fleeting or contradictory. These moments are not to be chased. They are to be observed, understood, and mirrored with emotional intelligence, enhancing the pull without demanding it. Resistance is another hallmark of obsession. The man who is captivated by you may oscillate between magnetic closeness and withdrawal. This is not rejection, but an internal struggle between desire, fear, and self-preservation. Men with high intensity and moderate avoidance patterns often pull back when emotions threaten to overwhelm, only to return with stronger focus. Caesar experienced this with Cleopatra. Political pressure, societal expectations, and personal uncertainty created intermittent withdrawal, yet the underlying obsession intensified with every absence and every reconnection. Psychology explains this as a cycle of emotional tension, reinforcement, and longing, the same dynamics that make intermittent reinforcement so powerfully addictive. Obsession also thrives on mirroring emotional states. A man will often subconsciously reflect the moods, energy, and emotional cadence of the woman he is fixated on. This is the essence of attunement, the unconscious synchronization of energy, speech patterns, and body language. When you notice the subtle changes in his behavior, the way he adjusts his tone, mimics your gestures, or seems to know what you feel, You are witnessing the neurological and emotional mechanisms of secret obsession in action. Cleopatra and Caesar both engaged in this intricate dance where reflection of energy was more powerful than words or proclamations. Today, awareness of these micro-patterns gives the modern woman insight into hidden desire, emotional alignment, and the magnetic pull of her presence. Another key driver is emotional reinforcement through unpredictability. Men's obsession grows when a woman is not entirely predictable, when her energy fluctuates in alignment with authenticity rather than compliance. The intelligent woman allows her inner life to flourish, creating natural rhythms of engagement and withdrawal. Nefertiti's court demonstrates this beautifully. Her selective availability, emotional composure, and unwavering sovereignty created fascination and loyalty without overt manipulation. Modern women who practice this principle, honoring their own life, boundaries, and inner rhythm, trigger profound subconscious fixation. Obsession is not manufactured. It emerges from the interplay of energy, alignment, and authentic presence. Psychologically, obsession is further reinforced by identity projection and emotional amplification. Men who become obsessed project onto the woman qualities they desire to see in themselves: inspiration, calm, vitality, or courage. These projections amplify the fixation because the woman becomes not only an object of desire, but a mirror of the man's aspirational self. Helen's myth illustrates this principle. Her presence reflected ideals, longing, and unfulfilled desire, creating chaos and fixation among men who saw in her what they yearned for. The modern woman can harness this understanding by embracing authenticity, clarity, and alignment, becoming the anchor for emotional intensity without having to chase it. Finally, the intensity of obsession is not solely about attention or desire. It is about psychological interplay and emotional resonance. The man secretly captivated experiences both tension and reward, challenge and fulfillment, presence and absence, all orchestrated around the woman's energy, mystery, and emotional sovereignty. Historical examples from Cleopatra to Nefertiti, Helen to Patroclus, demonstrate that fascination is a timeless interplay of energy, alignment, and subtlety. Modern psychology confirms this through attachment theory, dopamine reinforcement, and emotional mirroring. Awareness of these patterns equips women with insight, clarity, and mastery. Recognizing fascination without personalizing it, seeing obsession without chasing it, and understanding desire without compromising self-worth. As this chapter closes, the invisible currents of male obsession are no longer a mystery. You have glimpsed the mechanisms: identity shift, absence-induced longing, emotional resonance, vulnerability contrast, intermittent reinforcement, and projection of aspiration. You have seen the historical echoes of fascination that persist across time and the psychological principles that drive behavior today. Obsession is not a sign of weakness, nor a call for manipulation. It is a reflection of alignment, energy, and authentic feminine presence.